The preparedness industry has been quietly running one of the most successful long cons in modern retail, and most families have no idea they fell for it. Here is what actually happened over the past decade. Marketers figured out that fear sells at a premium. They built entire product categories around the idea that survival requires specialized gear, that readiness costs thousands of dollars, and that anything less than a fully equipped kit leaves your family exposed. And millions of people bought in, literally. $3,000, $5,000. Some families spent more than $10,000 building out what the industry calls a complete preparedness setup. Tactical water barrels, freeze-dried meal systems, portable power stations, high-output fuel stoves, insulated emergency shelters. Every practical problem your family might face now has a heavily marketed premium solution attached to it. But here is the thing the industry hopes you never actually think about. For almost every expensive product on that list, there is a cheap or even free alternative that handles the same problem just as well, sometimes better. The families quietly using these alternatives right now are not one bit less ready than the families who spent 5 times as much. They just kept the money. This is 17 specific tricks that replace expensive prep gear with dirt cheap or completely free alternatives. For each one, you will hear exactly what product it replaces, what that product costs, and how well the alternative actually performs. No hype, no dismissing the expensive gear unfairly, just an honest side-by-side comparison the industry would rather you never make. By the end, you will have a complete alternative kit that costs under $150 total and carries your family through the vast majority of blackout situations just as effectively as a several $1,000 setup would. And the money you save goes somewhere far more useful than a gear closet. Let us start with trick number 1. Trick 1 is the frozen water bottle system that replaces expensive cooler setups. The expensive version of this problem is a set of dedicated cooler ice packs running around $50, combined with a high-end insulated cooler with active cooling gel around $200. Total outlay, $250, and that is before you add anything to actually store inside it. The free version of this solution is already sitting in your kitchen right now. Pull any plastic bottle or empty milk jug from the recycling bin, wash it, fill it 3/4 of the way with water, freeze it. Do that over and over until your freezer is completely packed. Total cost, $0. During a blackout, those frozen bottles do 3 completely separate jobs at once. They keep your freezer's internal temperature low for an additional 1 to 3 days by absorbing incoming heat every time the door opens. They can be moved into your refrigerator or a standard cooler to extend safe storage for medications, insulin, or perishable food. And as they melt over time, they become clean drinking water, an emergency reserve that was sitting there the whole time at no expense. A freezer packed with frozen bottles gives you cooling capacity plus a water buffer, both produced from your own tap for free. Start filling bottles tonight and you will have this running by morning. That is trick 1. Trick 2 replaces expensive water storage barrel systems with something you can store in a single drawer. The expensive version is 355-gallon water barrels, plus a hand pump, plus shelving to hold them off the floor. Total cost, around $200. Plus, they take up a permanent corner of your basement or garage year-round. The alternative is a bathtub water bladder, which is a large food-grade plastic bag designed to sit inside your bathtub. Cost is $30 to $40. When a storm warning appears or a grid event is forecast, you unfold it, lay it in the tub, and fill it from the tap. You end up with roughly 100 gallons of sealed, clean drinking water sitting right there. The comparison is not even close. The bladder holds nearly the same volume as 2 full-size barrels combined. It folds completely flat and stores in a drawer for the rest of the year, taking up 0 floor space. The barrels cost 5 times as much and occupy a permanent footprint in your home. The only real edge the barrels have is that they are always full, no action required. The bladder needs 10 minutes of filling when a warning goes up. If you can live with that trade-off, and most people easily can, the bladder wins on every other measure. Coastal families and anyone in a grid-vulnerable area should own one. Almost none of them do, because the marketing budget went to barrels. Trick 3 replaces expensive oil lantern setups with something your kitchen produces every week as a byproduct of normal cooking. The expensive version is 2 brass oil lanterns at $40 each, a gallon of specialty lamp oil at $20, and replacement wicks. Total cost? Around $120, plus ongoing fuel expense. The alternative costs nothing. After your next weekend breakfast, pour the bacon grease into a small glass jar instead of throwing it away. Cut a length of cotton string, tear a thin strip from an old cotton shirt, or pull out an old shoelace. Twist it into a wick shape, submerge one end in the grease, leave the other end sticking up above the surface, and light it. That lamp burns for 2 to 4 hours per fill, depending on wick thickness. It produces warm yellow light similar to a candle, but with more staying power. And the fuel supply is self-replenishing because your kitchen generates it continuously as a cooking byproduct. You will not illuminate a whole room with one of these, but 3 of them arranged on a kitchen table produce enough light for an evening meal, a card game, or a family conversation in the dark. Frontier households used this exact method for decades before electricity. The technique was never complicated, just forgotten. Now you have it back. Trick 4 uses a $5 pack of Mylar blankets to do the work of hundreds of dollars in commercial window insulation products. The expensive version of window insulation, thermal film, professional installation, and electric window heating elements can run $300 to $500 for a whole house. Buy a 10-pack of emergency Mylar blankets at any dollar store or outdoor section. Total cost? $5 to $10 for the entire pack. During a hot summer blackout, tape Mylar to the inside of every south-facing and west-facing window before the afternoon sun hits them. The reflective surface bounces incoming solar heat back outside before it ever enters the room. Internal temperatures fall 10 to 15 degrees compared to uncovered windows during peak afternoon hours. During a cold winter blackout, tape the same Mylar to the inside of your windows after dark. The reflective surface now bounces radiant heat back into the room rather than letting it leak out through the glass, keeping interior temperatures noticeably warmer through the night. Same product, 2 completely opposite seasonal uses. Total cost? Essentially free compared to any commercial alternative. This is one of the highest return preparations on this entire list, and it costs less than a fast food lunch. Trick 5 replaces portable electric refrigeration with a 4,000-year-old cooling device that requires no electricity whatsoever. The expensive version is a 12-volt portable refrigerator powered by a battery and solar panel setup, running $600 to $800 for a functional system. The alternative is called a Zier pot. You need 2 unglazed terracotta pots of different sizes, some clean sand, and water. Total cost? Around $25 at any garden center. Here is how it works. Set the smaller pot inside the larger pot, resting on a sand base. Fill the gap between the 2 pots with damp sand, keeping that sand consistently wet. Put your food in the inner pot and cover the top with a wet cloth. As water evaporates from the sand, it carries heat away with it, dropping the temperature inside the inner pot. In dry heat conditions, the inner pot can run 15 to 20 degrees cooler than the surrounding air temperature. Vegetables stay fresh for a week or more. Butter remains usable for days. It runs entirely on water, which you already have stored. The commercial refrigerator does its job better in certain ways, but at 30 times the cost and with complete dependency on electricity. The Zier pot has neither of those vulnerabilities. That is Trick 5. Trick 6 replaces expensive power banks and solar charging systems with something already parked in your driveway. The expensive version is a large capacity power bank at $50 to $100, a solar panel to recharge it at another $100, and the hardware to keep both organized and accessible. Total cost, $200 to $300 for real backup charging capability. The alternative is a $5 car charger that plugs into your vehicle's cigarette lighter socket and provides multiple USB ports simultaneously. Total cost, $5, assuming you already own a running car. 20 minutes of engine running per day charges a full family's phones with capacity to spare.
The fuel cost of 20 minutes of idling is roughly equivalent to what you would normally spend charging those phones from the grid, so the ongoing expense is negligible. More importantly, your car's fuel tank represents an energy reserve that dwarfs any power bank you could purchase. The effective charging capacity of that tank is not a few hundred watt-hours, but potentially days of sustained phone use.
Most families completely forget this capability exists because there is no product attached to it and the industry has nothing to sell here. The capability is sitting in your driveway right now. Trick 7 replaces professional weather stripping and insulation upgrades with material you are probably throwing away every week. The expensive version of full house gap sealing, door seals, window film, foam application runs $150 in materials at minimum, or double that with professional help. The alternative is old newspaper rolled tightly into dense cylinders and stuffed into every gap where you feel airflow moving between inside and outside. Total cost? Zero, using material headed for the recycling bin anyway. Newspaper insulates surprisingly well because the trapped air between compressed pages is what actually blocks heat transfer. Stuffed tightly under a door, along a windowsill, or into any obvious drafty point, it dramatically slows temperature exchange. During a blackout, when your heating or cooling system is down, every degree your home holds on to matters. Old towels work. Folded blankets pressed against door bottoms work. The material is less important than the principle, which is that any dense material blocking an airflow gap slows heat loss. Every home has enough of these materials to seal the critical gaps without spending a dollar. Trick 8 replaces expensive cold weather sleeping bags with wool blankets from a thrift store. The expensive version is a set of proper cold weather sleeping bags for an entire family. At $200 per bag, outfitting 4 people runs $800 or more. Thrift store wool blankets cost $15 to $30 each. Outfitting a family of 4 runs under $100 total. Wool has one specific property that makes it uniquely valuable in an emergency context. It retains most of its insulating capacity even when damp, unlike cotton and most synthetic materials. That matters because emergency conditions often involve moisture, whether from condensation, sweat, or weather. 2 heavy wool blankets layered over a sleeping person deliver roughly the same warmth as a mid-range sleeping bag. They are also more flexible since you can add or remove layers as the temperature changes through the night, which you cannot do with a fixed rating bag. Military units and polar expedition teams have relied on wool for well over a century for exactly these reasons. The thrift store version works the same way. Trick 9 replaces expensive multi-fuel camping stoves with a tool that has been in kitchens for centuries. The expensive version is a high-end multi-fuel backpacking stove that burns gasoline, kerosene, propane, or alcohol, plus dedicated fuel bottles, plus maintenance kits. Total cost? Around $300 for a complete setup. The alternative is a good cast iron skillet. Total cost? $30, and it lasts a lifetime with minimal care. Cast iron works over every heat source you are likely to encounter in any blackout scenario. A wood fire in the backyard, charcoal in a standard grill, a propane camp stove, gas burners if the gas line stays live, a wood stove if you have one, direct coals. It simply does not care what is generating the heat below it. The expensive multi-fuel stove is trying to become a single device that burns many different fuels. Cast iron takes the opposite approach. It is a single cooking surface that accepts heat from any source without needing to know what that source is. The outcome is identical. The cost difference is enormous. That is Trick 9. Trick 10 replaces freeze-dried emergency meal buckets with something you can buy at any grocery store for a fraction of the price. The expensive version is a set of freeze-dried survival meal buckets running $50 to $100 each, providing a few weeks of food per person. Outfitting a family properly costs $200 or more, and the cost per calorie is high. The alternative is dried beans and rice purchased at around $1 per pound, stored in mason jars with oxygen absorber packets. A case of large mason jars costs about $20. Each oxygen absorber costs around 50 cents. Total for a substantial food reserve, roughly $20 when you account for containers already in use. Beans and rice stored this way remain safe and nutritious for 20 to 30 years. Eaten together, they form a complete protein, covering nutritional needs that either grain alone would not. They can be cooked in plain water over any heat source. They cost a small fraction of what freeze-dried products charge per calorie, and unlike specialty survival food, they are ingredients your family already uses, which means rotating the supply happens automatically through normal cooking.
The freeze-dried bucket has its place for convenience in very specific scenarios.
But measured by calories per dollar, shelf life per year, or practicality in real use, mason jars of beans and rice outperform in every category that actually matters. The industry sells buckets because the margins are higher. Beans and rice are the actual answer. Trick 11 replaces expensive indoor propane heaters with a small ceramic device that costs about $3. The expensive version is a propane space heater at $150, plus canister fuel, plus safety equipment appropriate for indoor combustion. Total cost, $200 upfront and ongoing fuel costs after that, along with real carbon monoxide risks if ventilation is inadequate. The alternative is a small terracotta flower pot, inverted over 3 or 4 tea light candles sitting on a heat-safe plate. Total cost, $3 for the pot, $1 for candles. The ceramic material absorbs heat from the candle flames below and radiates it back outward as warmer, more diffuse heat than the candle flame alone would produce. It will not heat a large room, but in a small bathroom, a walk-in closet, or a compact bedroom with the door closed, it produces a noticeable and meaningful difference between shivering and comfortable. For a family sheltering together in one small room during a cold weather blackout, that is a real capability at essentially no cost. Keep sensible precautions in place. Never leave candles burning unattended. Keep them away from any flammable material. Ensure there is some air circulation. These risks are real but are significantly more manageable than indoor propane combustion. Almost no one in the preparedness space talks about this because there is no product to attach to it. Trick 12 replaces commercial fire starters with material you are probably throwing away every single week. The expensive version is a case of commercial fire starters, including waxed cardboard blocks, chemical fire cubes, or self-lighting bricks. Total cost, around $80 for a meaningful supply. The alternative is old newspaper rolled tightly into dense cylinders with the ends twisted closed. Total cost, $0. Wet the roll slightly, let it dry completely, and it burns even longer and hotter. A properly prepared newspaper roll burns for 15 to 20 minutes, which is more than enough heat to catch kindling and then larger wood reliably. Stack 2 or 3 under a small kindling arrangement and you have consistent fire ignition without purchasing anything. American households throw away enough newspaper every single week to supply a fireplace through any extended blackout. Most of them never realize they are discarding usable fuel. Now you do. Trick 13 replaces expensive commercial sanitation systems with a setup that costs less than $15 and works just as well. The expensive version is a commercial emergency toilet system with chemical treatment packets, fitted disposable liners, and odor control accessories. Total cost, $200 for a complete kit. The alternative is a standard 5-gallon bucket from any hardware store, a snap-on toilet seat lid designed for 5-gallon buckets, heavy-duty trash bag liners, and kitty litter or sawdust to cover each use. Total cost, $8 to $15 for everything. When a blackout disrupts municipal water pressure, standard flush toilets stop working. The bucket system handles the sanitation need completely. Kitty litter or sawdust absorbs liquid and neutralizes odor effectively. The bag gets sealed and removed when full. This is the exact solution used by hunters, campers, and professional disaster response teams. It works as well as any commercial alternative at a fraction of the price. The industry sells the elegant version because an elegant version exists. The bucket does the actual job. Trick 14 replaces multiple separate battery-powered devices with a single hand crank unit that requires no batteries at all. The expensive version is a quality flashlight at $40, a separate emergency radio at $60, a weather alert receiver at $50, and the ongoing cost of keeping batteries in all of them. Total cost, $250 or more once you factor in battery replacement over time. The alternative is a combination hand-crank device that integrates a flashlight, AM and FM radio, weather alert reception, and a USB charging port for phones. Total cost, around $30 for a decent unit. The specific advantage of hand-cranked power is that it has no depletion point as long as someone can physically operate it. 1 minute of cranking produces enough stored energy for an hour of flashlight use or a short phone call. During any blackout scenario, that means completely independent power that requires no fuel, no stored batteries, and no external supply chain. The separate premium devices.
For a family that needs reliable basic capability during an emergency, the $30 hand crank unit covers the essential ground at a fraction of the cost and without the risk of dead batteries at the worst possible moment. Trick 15 replaces an entire cabinet of specialty cleaning products with 2 ingredients that cost $5 combined and store indefinitely. The expensive version is a case of emergency cleaning supplies, including disinfectant sprays, sanitizing wipes, odor eliminators, and specialty surface solutions. Total cost, around $100 for a real supply. The alternative is a gallon of white vinegar at $3 and a box of baking soda at $2. Vinegar disinfects hard surfaces, cuts through grease, eliminates most common odors, cleans glass, and can be diluted for hand washing when running water is unavailable. Baking soda scrubs surfaces without scratching, absorbs odors from refrigerators and containers, and neutralizes acidic spills and messes. Together, they clean drains, deodorize storage containers, and sanitize nearly any surface a household will need during a disruption. These two ingredients replace a dozen specialty products at a combined cost of $5, and they store indefinitely without degrading. The industry sells specialty products because specialty products have better margins. The two-ingredient version handles the same workload. Trick 16 replaces expensive fuel transfer equipment with 8 feet of plastic tubing. The expensive version of dedicated fuel transfer is a hand pump system with specialty hoses, safety filters, and fitted connectors. Total cost, $200 to $300 for a complete setup. The alternative is a 6-foot length of clean plastic tubing from any hardware store. Total cost, $8. Gravity siphoning has moved liquid between containers reliably for over a century. Place the source container higher than the destination. Fill the tube with fluid from the source while keeping both ends submerged. Move one end down to the receiving container. Gravity completes the transfer without any pump or power required. This works for moving gasoline from a car's tank into a generator when you have no other means. It works for water between storage containers. It works for any liquid transfer situation you are likely to face. The commercial pump kits offer convenience advantages in specific professional contexts. For household emergency use, an $8 hose in a kitchen drawer handles the job. Every family should have one and should practice using it at least once before an emergency requires it. Trick 17 is the single most powerful preparation on this entire list, and it costs nothing to build except consistent effort over time. The expensive version of trying to cover every conceivable emergency need independently, medical supplies for every injury, tools for every repair, food for every dietary restriction, security for every threat scenario, runs into several $1,000s even before you account for the gaps no individual household can close, no matter how much they spend. The free alternative is knowing your neighbors well enough to ask for help and give it. Think about what a connected block actually holds collectively. The person 2 doors down who trained as a nurse, the family at the end of the street with a wood stove already running, the retired contractor with a workshop full of tools, the elderly couple with 40 years of practical knowledge about growing and preserving food, the person with a large garden, the household with a truck. No single family builds all of that in-house, regardless of what they spend. A neighborhood that actually functions as a community holds all of it collectively, and the exchange of that capacity during extended difficulty is what genuinely carries people through hard situations, historically and in every documented disaster response. Building this takes nothing but repeated, low-stakes effort in normal times. Introduce yourself, remember names, show up occasionally, help when something small comes up. That investment pays back during an emergency more reliably than any gear purchase you could make, and the preparedness industry never points toward it because there is absolutely nothing to sell. That is trick 17. So here is the complete list. Frozen water bottles, bathtub bladder, bacon grease lamp, Mylar on windows, Zier pot for cooling, car charger, newspaper insulation and gap stuffing, wool blankets from a thrift store, cast iron for cooking, mason jars of beans and rice, candle and ceramic pot heater, newspaper fire logs, bucket toilet, hand crank all-in-one device, vinegar and baking soda, a siphon hose, and your neighbors. Combined cost of all the purchased items on this list sits under $150 total. The gear those items replace would run $3,000 to $5,000 at industry price.
The practical preparedness outcome is essentially identical. 4 things are worth carrying with you from all of this. First, almost none of the specialty gear the preparedness industry sells is actually necessary. Every major category of practical need has a cheap or free alternative that handles the same underlying problem. The families who built their readiness around those alternatives are not deficient in any meaningful way. They solved the same problems with different tools and kept the difference in their bank accounts. Understanding this changes how you think about preparation entirely. It stops being about what you buy and starts being about what problems you have actually solved.
Second, the knowledge behind most of these tricks is durable in a way that purchased gear is not. Once you understand how evaporative cooling works, you can build a Zier pot anywhere with basic materials. Once you know how to use a siphon, you can transfer fuel in any situation without specialized equipment. Once you have made a bacon grease lamp, you know how to produce light from cooking waste indefinitely. That kind of embedded practical knowledge does not sit in a closet degrading. It does not require battery replacement or periodic upgrades. It is permanently available and applies across a wide range of situations the original instruction never anticipated. Third, the money saved by skipping overpriced prep products is money that can go toward things that actually produce more resilience per dollar: a real food reserve, a real water reserve, medical training, community relationships. Those investments improve your family's actual capacity to handle disruption, not just the appearance of readiness. A gear closet full of premium products looks prepared. A household with deep food reserves, practical skills, and strong neighbor relationships actually is. Fourth, the preparedness industry is not malicious for selling expensive products. It is a normal industry following normal incentives. The incentive is to sell products, so the emphasis falls on products. Your family's actual resilience, however, depends mostly on capabilities, and many of the most important capabilities have nothing attached to them that could be sold. Recognizing that gap between what the industry promotes and what actually builds resilience is the filter that lets you invest your attention and your money in the right direction. Now, here is what to actually do with all of this in the next 7 days. Pick 3 tricks from this list that fit your specific household situation and try them before next weekend. Fill your freezer with frozen water bottles tonight. Put 2 terracotta pots and a bag of sand on your shopping list this week for a Zier pot experiment. Try the candle and pot heater in a small room this weekend just to feel how much it actually changes the temperature. Converting abstract knowledge into real practice is the difference between information and capability, and it takes less than an afternoon per trick. Then do an honest audit of any preparedness purchases you have been planning. For each one, ask what specific problem it solves and whether any technique on this list solves that same problem at a fraction of the price. If a cheaper path gets you to the same functional outcome, redirect the money toward food reserves or water reserves or skills, the layers that produce real resilience instead of just the feeling of it. And if you have not yet met every household immediately around you, introduce yourself to one neighbor this week. That 5-minute conversation, extended into a real relationship over time, is worth more to your family's actual safety than any single piece of gear you have ever purchased. It is also completely free. Preparedness is not a product category, it is a set of solved problems. The 17 approaches in this video solve those problems at a fraction of what the industry asks you to spend, and the money you save belongs in the foundation: food, water, skills, and people that carries families through real difficulty. If this was useful, hit like and share it with one person in your life who needs to hear it. The channel is MY Channel. More of this kind of content lives there and more is coming. Take care of yourself.